Attention duelists! Welcome to the Kuribros, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime recap podcast. I'm your host Phoenix, and joining me is my co-host Andy. Andy, how you doing?
I'm super excited to start doing this with you, Phoenix. It's we've been working at this for a little while now, and I'm just a little speechless, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised how much prep work has gone into this. I was really expecting it to be just sort of a goof thing we do, but we've put in a lot more thought of it, most of which came from your end of it, because if I was entirely leading this project, it would be a real slop job. But, you're adding that air of professionalism that the people are going to enjoy.
Well, I think a little bit of structure when we talk about our children card game anime will hopefully keep the listeners enthralled.
There are rules and the rules matter. But before we talk about the rules and how they don't matter, how about we talk a bit about ourselves, the thing people aren't listening to this podcast for?
Sure, you want to start off?
Sure. So, in terms of talking about ourselves, we'll keep it related to Yu-Gi-Oh! Not going to get too deep into it. My history with Yu-Gi-Oh! Began in, I want to say, 2001. Got some Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards from another kid at school. Notable card that I had was Flame Cerberus, which I thought was really cool. It sucked then and it sucks now, in hindsight. But I enjoyed it, and that sort of kickstarted my interest in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. Parents had a little bit of the satanic panic thing, so weren't able to get super into it at first, but they backed off of that really quickly, actually. And after that, me and my brother just started watching the show anytime it was on, started collecting the cards, started playing it. I played it with you, Andy, as well. We went to school together, and throughout the years, I've had various stints going in and out of interest in the game, done a couple of tournaments at shops, a couple of pre-release events throughout the years, and now I have started to make my bones in the world as streaming Master Duel, along with other games, but mainly focusing on that. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Has had a long-lasting impact on me. It's really got its hooks in, and apparently it will never truly let go. What about you?
Well, like you said, we used to play it a lot as kids. I was really into it like early in my elementary school time, back when it started really getting big as well. I was really into like Dark Magician, Red Eyes Black Dragon, wanted Blue Eyes stuff. Didn't really know how to play the card game properly, but I sure did love watching the animes. I watched the animes for a good bit, fell off around after a little bit after GX, kind of got back into it for 5Ds. Have been kind of just, as the years have gone on, had like slight quick hyper focuses with it, and then kind of drip ball back out. Would go back in for like Zexal, and when that format came out, then I kind of backed out when the next few animes came out, and just kind of that's been my kind of life. But the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime has always had such a big impact on me. I've watched it forever, and when you came to me and proposed to me to do this, I was kind of interested to like kind of go through and look at it at different time in my life, different age range, and from different perspectives that will kind of go over. But it's been pretty big into me, and that's actually kind of mostly because you've kind of dragged me along with you.
Yeah, I'm nothing if not an enthusiastic patient zero when it comes to my interests. Everyone's gonna enjoy this because I enjoy it.
And I've enjoyed it every time.
Yeah. So you want to tell those fine freaks out there how we're going to be doing this show, or at the very least this episode?
So the majority of the show is going to be focusing on the original anime Duel Monsters that came out in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. And we're going to kind of go through each episode, kind of more dual, kind of like parts of each part of the series. Go at it from the beginning, and when I mean the beginning, I actually mean for this first episode, we are actually going to cover a good majority of what is called Season 0, which is not a part of the Duel Monsters anime that got popular in the early 2000s. Toei Animation actually created what is known, like most famously known as Season 0, which kind of covers a lot of the first bit of Kazuki Takahashi's original manga. Because fun fact, Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't start as a card games series. That kind of came through as the series was going on and it was being published. It was a lot of the first little bits was like different games. Each chapter, Yugi would turn into Yami Yugi, play a game with some bastard child, and play a shadow game and either kill them or, very questionably, like wonder if they are alive. And as like the series went on, a lot of more positive feedback came with the card games, and that's how we kind of have it as the style we know today. So we thought it was important to kind of go through the story aspects that are talked about in season 0, because they do kind of follow what is going on in the main series. And I also think it kind of clears up a little bit. I think it's important to talk about, even though it's not really so wildly like talked about in the popular anime. But I think it gives us some good insight. I think it's a good bit of discussion.
Knowing where the show came from and seeing the parts of it that managed to stick around past the changeover between production studios, I think is going to be, at the very least, interesting, and also maybe provide some insights on the ideas that stuck out to the fans or to Takahashi or anyone else that made changes between the adaptations of it.
Yeah, because as I've learned reading the manga, and we'll kind of go into that in a second, it's a lot darker. And it was actually like originally planned to be like a horror manga. But it was kind of changed more into like a shonen manga, with the vehicle being gains instead of, power ups and energy blasts like most shonen at that time. It's a very interesting story as we come to know. And what I kind of do with this podcast, besides audio engineering, kind of organizing everything, I'm going to be the manga correspondent. I have read the manga. I am going to be actively reading manga as we go along. We're kind of going to do this from start to finish. So if you're just watching the Yu-Gi-Oh anime for the first time, you can watch it with us. If you already know the anime, you can listen to us and kind of listen to what we have to say about it. And I'll be giving the perspective of what Takahashi's original vision was for this, and kind of going over a little bit of differences and little fun tidbits of things that like happened in the anime, or the manga, such as the first game, which is very different from the first game in the anime.
And my role in this show is going to be covering the dubbed version, as child who was born in the 90s, watching those Saturday morning cartoons in the early thousands. We've all seen the subbed version that would air on whatever Saturday morning cartoon show was your choice. I think it was WB Kids was the one that I first saw Yu-Gi-Oh on. But I'm going to be going into the Japanese audio to see what all changes were left on the cutting room floor when 4Kids adapted it for the English audiences out there. Seeing all the things that they cut, 4Kids is famous for the changes that they make to their programs, such as the various ways that they adjust alcohol to juice, turning guns into pointing fingers, or triggered powered hammers and the such. And I've also seen every Yu-Gi-Oh series up through Vrains, so I've got a fair bit of insight into various plot points and references that come up and come back throughout the show's lifetime.
I'll also be going through the dub, but I'll be mostly focusing on the manga, where Phoenix will be focusing mostly on the sub and the original Japanese broadcast.
Oh hell, I think I did say dub instead of sub was my part.
It's okay. I wanted to help. I'm here for that.
You know, if it wasn't for your help, this thing would not be being made, because I don't know how to engineer audio.
It's not as hard as you think it is, but I like being useful.
Bro, I tried and I'm struggling.
Just take a few classes, take 4 years of it, and you'll know that you just wasted 4 years of your life.
Yeah, 4 years, get a degree, get depression.
Here we go. All right, without further ado, do we want to start with episode 1, and for me, chapter 1 of season 0?
It's a great place to start.
So this is the introduction of our main character, Yugi, who is presented to us as a small, weak teenager, but has a large love for games, kind of like our author.
He's like 3 feet tall, 3.5 feet.
Very, very, very small, sweet lad, but does not stand up for himself very well. He presents himself with a Millennium box that is holding an ancient puzzle that he has worked on for 8 years but has never been able to fully solve. Um, then enters two of our supporting casts, Joey and Tristan, who are going to use the English version of the names just because I think that's going to be more widely known. And also, I don't want to mess up any names. Who are bullying Yugi, messing with him, taking the puzzle and like kind of playing monkey in the middle, things like that, and is only stopped when Taya enters the room and is introduced, and kind of tells him to back off or whatever, and we kind of learn about Taya and Yugi's friendship. Just they've been friends forever. When Joey and Tristan get pushed away and everything, Yugi kind of mentions he has a wish, doesn't really say anything about it though. He's like, I don't want, whatever. You kind of go back to Joey and Tristan, who gets harassed by a hallmunder named Ushio.
Ushio is 6.5 feet of bad vibes.
Extremely bad vibes. And you find out after, they're getting their verbal beating by Ushio that Joey actually snagged one of the Millennium puzzle pieces and throws it out a window into some sort of body of water. It's kind of different in the anime and the manga, but it is in a body of water. You kind of do learn that Joey is kind of doing this to kind of like make Yugi more of like confident, stand up for themselves. Maybe not doing it the most healthy way, but wants him to just kind of, quote unquote, man up. Not necessarily in a toxic way, though.
You had mentioned before that they were bullying Yugi. I'd say it's sort of a soft bullying where it doesn't feel malicious behind it.
I think in the anime it kind of feels more malicious than it does in the actual manga. It feels more, to me personally, like it kind of goes into like more of a like joshing. But in the anime, it kind of feels more like they're doing it a little bit more deliberately. Well, actually, no. Joey's doing it a little more deliberately, and Tristan is actually not. But in the manga, Tristan is a little bit more deliberate. In the anime, he's a janitor or some stupid thing. So, regardless, that is the motive for Joey. After school, Ushio approaches Yugi and is like, I saw that those two knuckleheads were kind of, busting your balls or whatever. That's what I think he sounds like nowadays. And he goes like, I'll protect you if you want me to, for the right price. But Yugi's like, no, they're my friends. They're just kind of having fun with me. Don't worry about it. We kind of learn more about the puzzle through Yugi's grandpa, who is later introduced as Yugi comes home from school. Kind of that like he's the one who got it. He brought it back for him because he knew Yugi loved playing games. The next day, Ushio shows off a beating Joey and Tristan to Yugi and is like, look, I can do this. Look at my services. And also, now you owe me money because I did it for you anyway. Yugi's like, no, wait, these are my friends. Like, gets in front of them, like, defends them. And they, like, again, like, expresses how he was trying to help them, not bully him. But still, Ushio kind of goes with the bribe of, you need to give 200,000 yen for his services. Yugi stresses about having the money because he's a broke high school student. No job. You actually apparently can't have a job while you're attending high school at this time. Don't know how that is nowadays. So he tries to kind of like most coping mechanisms, uses his puzzle as like a way to kind of distract himself from the stress. Almost finish, like he's like, wow, it's really coming easy to me now, but does not have that last piece of the puzzle when he's almost there. 8 years, he's almost there and he cannot do it. The way these kind of play out in the anime and the manga is a little different. In the manga, Yugi like tears his room apart, and then Yugi's grandpa enters in and says someone like left you, like someone dropped this off for you. You find out Joey went into the body of water that he dropped it in and fished it out, and he brought it back kind of anonymously in the manga. But in the anime, Yugi like panics and goes back to school thinking he dropped it at school. Joey confronts Ushio in the anime and gets his ass beat, and then gives Yugi the puzzle piece then. Either way, now Yugi has the last puzzle piece. He finally completes the puzzle, and a sudden dark spirit arrives from the puzzle and possesses Yugi. Then this is now when Yugi, who we will call Yami Yugi and not what Yugi's name is, because we'll kind of go chronologically. So at the time, he was known as Yami Yugi, confronts Ushio and plays a shadow game with him. which Ushio tries to cheat and loses. Ushio is subject to a penalty game where he is engrossed in illusions. Yugi does not remember anything. Joey and Yugi become real friends, and there's a really interesting line about like friendship, which is a very, very, very huge theme in this series. And there's a good line. It's like something you show but you can't see, which is friendship. And it's an interesting note. Yugi and Joey's original Japanese name are based on the word Yujo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which means friendship. A little bit of difference with the Shadow game. I'm just gonna quickly add. In the anime, it's like some sort of like card tower game where if they like flip the card, they go up a bunch of spaces or go down a bunch of spaces, and Ushio tries to do something to cheat and loses. In the manga, it's like they have a giant stack of cash and they have to like stab their hand, and whatever like amount of money they get to keep, but like eventually you'll stab your hand, and it's dark, and I can understand why they didn't do it in the anime, but either way, he does get engulfed by illusions.
They bring back that Shadow game with the money stab in a later episode, I believe, right?
They might have tried something like that, but I don't think they did it like how they did it in this.
And for those listening at home who aren't able to just convert money in their head, back when this came out in 1998, the 200,000 yen, I believe, translated to around somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000. It's not an exact translate, but I think the conversion rate was 100 yen was about 50 cents back then. So that's how much it was.
Yeah, it was a very enthralling first chapter, honestly. I was very it was very good. And
very good intro.
It basically gave you everything you needed to know. It set up the spirit very well with the puzzle, and it kind of it kind of gives you that idea of, okay, this is supposed to be the true self of Yugi kind of thing, which is always what was the intention behind Yami Yugi. It is that self you don't believe you have, but you always have inside of you. That's like what represents Yami Yugi. He's supposed to be the Yugi wants to be, and ends up becoming throughout the series.
A bit from the very beginning of the episode that I just wanted to call attention to because it caught my eye in the rewatch was when the episode begins and they're in the school. A bell is ringing to dismiss kids. A random classmate asks Yugi to come out and join the rest of the kids playing basketball. And Yugi is the one who says, like, no, I wouldn't be very good, I'm short. So I did think it was a little odd that Yugi was getting invited by people to go out and do things, despite the show's theme of him getting his friends and finding his confidence in his true self throughout the course of the show, when clearly people were already fine with him and liked him enough to just invite him out and to hang.
I know it seemed more. It translates to me like it's a confidence thing more than anything, because like at the first page of the manga, it's literally one student is like, "Hey Yugi, quit playing games by yourself and come play basketball for once." And he kind of like, one is a little shocked playing his game. He's like, "That's okay. My team will lose once," but he may also not have like an interest in like physical activity games, and that's what he kind of also means, like, well, I don't have any friends that have these kinds of interests. I have friends that like, these people want to play basketball or do some athletics, and I'm not very good at that. So it's probably a bit of confidence and a bit of shy and a bit of different interests.
The Virgin Yugi versus the Chad student background character.
No name, man, but he can shoot those hoops.
He sure can spin a basketball, just like Troy Bolton, American hero.
Oh, goodness gracious. We're all in this together.
No, the copyright. Disney's gonna have our asses.
So, rather than go through the entire season 0, because a lot of what season 0 is one-off episodes where different games are played. There's like a really cool Tamagotchi episode in the manga that kind of gets ruined in the anime because there's a really cool Yugi moment. There's like dragon block card things. There's capsule monsters that we'll talk about later, and different puzzles and things like that. So I'm gonna go over the supporting cast, and then we'll talk about some of the bigger events that happen throughout the season that kind of corresponds with what we'll talk about in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monster. So I want to start with talking about our main support cast of Taya, Joey, Tristan, and who won't be in the Duel Monsters series, but is in this series, Miho, who is just a female character so they can have another female character. I don't mean to say it like that, but it really feels like that in this.
She's a background, be pretty Moe Blob character.
Very kind of the ditzy comedic girl, where it kind of counteracts with Taya's more serious, maybe support. Taya's kind of the next focus, and she's actually as quickly as episode 2, where she it has a job at a new fast food restaurant called Burger World, secret because, like I said earlier, apparently you couldn't have a job when you're in high school around this time. Yugi and Joey actually find her there because they want to check out the new burger joint. And you kind of learn a little bit more about Taya, kind of be like, listen, this is a secret. I'm trying to raise money so I can afford to go to school in America. I want to learn how to dance. That's my big dream. That's what I want to do. You kind of learn a little bit of like where she is and her motivations, and she's not just a friend of Yugi. She has her own hopes and dreams. Unfortunately, in the chapter, there's obviously conflict where a escaped criminal holds the burger joint hostage and specifically holds Taya hostage. Then Yugi becomes Yami Yugi, plays a shadow game. Taya is actually tied up, like eyes tied up, and so she doesn't know who's saving her.
I think the kids call that blindfolded.
I forgot the word. So it's a little different it plays out a little differently in the manga and the anime, but the convict basically tells Yugi to bring him like cigarettes and booze. Doesn't feel very threatened by Yugi. They play a shadow game where they can only use one finger. Yugi tricks the convict to like only use his like gun finger while he's pouring booze. Yugi uses his thumb, lights the lighter for his cigarette, and puts it on the hand with the booze. So if he moves or anything, the fire will, or like the lighter will fall on the booze and everything will catch fire. Could catch fire because of the gun firing, so he kind of trapped him. And eventually, like in the anime, I think they book him, but in the manga, he burns to death because the lighter falls on the booze and he catches fire. So I assume he's dead.
Normal show for kids.
And Taya then is like, I don't know who that man was, but this is kind of where she kind of like starts gaining that kind of love interest in, I think, Yami, but ultimately becomes Yugi, I think, at the end of the day. But I don't really know how that kind of ended, like, officially.
Well, it didn't, because they turned the show into a different show.
That's right. That's kind of really where Taya lies. And then the biggest character, I think, to talk about is Joey.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Brooklyn Rage. And Joey is kind of Yugi's best friend. He is the main support character. He is, he gains a big role throughout the series, and you kind of gain a real respect for him. A lot of Joey's focus is a bit sporadic, but it mostly focuses on episode 9 in season 0. It adapts, like, mainly is chapters 11, 12, 48, and 49. And it kind of goes over that, Joey comes from a broken home. His father's an alcoholic. He doesn't really stay at home all the time. He has a sister that's anime only in season 0. But his parents are divorced. He used to hang out with like a bad crew, gets back into it with the bad crew at one point, because they were going to hurt, the gang. Gets out of the crew with the help of Yugi in 2 different ways. And you kind of learn that he was like a bad kid, who's just trying to do right and trying to be better. And Yugi is a big motivator and support for him in that time. Not too much goes on with Joey. He really is kind of just the support for season 0, but he is like the most vocal support of the gang, and the one who I think Yugi falls on a lot besides Yami, who he doesn't really know until as the series kind of progressed, and he kind of is more and more aware of who Yami is. And then lastly, but very much leastly, I'm squishing both Tristan and Miho together because Miho's not really too much worth talking about, but I kind of believe they're both really nothing characters in this series. Tristan doesn't really do too much in the manga. in the manga, in the chapter he's really focused on, Yugi doesn't even really visually like him. He's played more as a gag character in the anime, kind of glorifies being this like student janitor. He calls it like some sort of professional name, and it's it's a bit that he's like in love with Miho. Miho's the slightly ditzy other female character, who was the only one of any of the other girls in the manga early on that had like a name or a focus. So I guess the anime, the people who were behind the anime were like, well, we need someone else. They have a chapter together in chapter 7 that is kind of adapted in episode 10, but it's not, the episode's not focused on them whatsoever. It's focused, like, it's the same like outline of like setup, conflict, payoff as the chapter, but it's focusing on some random girl and her crush on Joey, and like kind of plays out really dumb. It's the only time that like Tristan and Miho like had like quote unquote canonically some sort of like focus, and they just kind of threw that away for stupid bits and dumb gags that are throughout the series. Really nothing too much to them. Tristan kind of goes on to the rest of the series, where Miho is obviously gone by the end of this season 0 series. Really kind of wasted character, but the other two are really cool, and again, they go through a bunch of different antics with Yugi before we start getting into, while being sprinkled with main lore story that we will now kind of start going into.
And that feels like a good part to get into the actual story, and where we are introduced to the first real driving plot of this. Well, not the first to show up, but the first one that becomes relevant, I'll say, which would be the shoddy episodes. Shoddy episodes of Season 0, episodes 5 and 6. And they go as thus. The shoddy episodes begin with Domino City being name dropped, that being where all of the adventures of our characters take place, and Yugi's grandfather is connecting with an old archaeology professor friend of his by the name of Yoshimori. Yoshimori has an Egyptian exhibit that is at the Domino City Museum, and so he's invited Solomon Moto, that's Yugi's grandpa, to come see it, along with all of Yugi and his friends. They go there to see it, and they meet Yoshimori. He shows them around, and they also introduced to the museum's owner, a man named Kanekura. Kanekura is dressed like a carnival barker and has used car salesman vibes, and so you can kind of see where this is going. After seeing Yugi has the Millennium Puzzle around his neck, Kanekura is a little grabby hands with it and sort of soft coerces Yugi into letting them display it in the museum, as it is a piece of Egyptian history, which, saying that out loud, does make it a little sketch for a kid to just be walking around wearing that, but it was the 90s. We were different about things back then that we shouldn't have been. And so, the Millennium Puzzle is put up on display. The friend gang walks around, looks at some various exhibits, and we see that Kanekura is sort of trying to strike a deal with another unnamed man in a suit to sell him the Millennium Puzzle. And here you can kind of see that Kanekura's been making a profit by selling away priceless Egyptian artifacts, which is also not good, and at least they acknowledge it in the 90s.
Not good at all.
While this is going on, Shoddy enters the scene. How would I describe Shoddy? He looks cool in a very minimalist bedsheet way.
He's, this is the first we're actually getting into, like, divulging into the Millennium world. That is that part of the series. And he just kind of brings this mysterious aura about him, and I think he brings that throughout the entire series. But you really get the sense you really want to learn who he is, and if he's really friend or foe, and you kind of are unsure about him at first.
He definitely does have that vibe of the mystic who knows more about the thing but doesn't tell you.
Yeah, he's like the Skull Knight in Berserk, if anyone's adult enough to read that.
Well, if we're here for a Yu-Gi-Oh podcast, a lot of people are here to reminisce, so they better be adults by now.
I hope to God.
If there's anyone in our younger audience out there, don't say fuck.
Also, don't read Berserk.
Don't do it.
Until you're like
30.
Honestly, I would say 18.
Yeah, that one's a rough one. But we're not here to talk about Berserk.
I am.
So, Shadi is at the museum as well, looking at an exhibit next to Yugi, and Yugi notices that Shadi is crying. He is crying without any expression, and Shadi says that these tears are not his, but they are those of the soul of the mummy he is looking at. Cut to later that night at the museum, where the museum owner is looking to make the sale, and the man he was looking to sell it to just sort of corpse falls through the doorway, and Shadi follows behind, saying that the man has failed the test or has wicked intents. And then he proceeds to do the same test to Kanekura. Shadi mentions that he is a member of the Tomb Guardians, and he is here to protect these Millennium items, and this man was trying to sell it, so that's a real no-no in their book. He uses the Millennium Scale to play a game where, simply put, he weighs the man's ability to be honest, and the man fails super hard. The test does not even say the morally correct answer, it's just don't lie. And he is unable to do that, showing his greed and duplicitous nature. And the man is then consumed by Ammit, who, in Egyptian mythology, Ammit is associated with Anubis. Whenever a soul fails Anubis' test of weighing their heart against a feather, if they fail, their heart is fed to Ammit. Ammit has the head of a crocodile, the front legs of a lion, and the back legs of a hippo. If I got any of that wrong, sorry, Egypt. After doing this, Shadi is leaving with the puzzle, and Yugi came back to the museum to get it after realizing he had forgotten it. I do think it's interesting that Yugi was apart from the puzzle, because as we'll see in Season 1 and onward, how much Yugi refuses to be apart from it at all.
I know, it must have been some sort of convenient writing, or maybe he wasn't too as attached, because by that point, what you're referring to, he is more connected to the Millennium Puzzles, so he seems a little bit more possessive of it at that point, rather than here, where it's still a little early on. He still doesn't ever remember like what happens after the events with whenever Yami comes out.
So, as Shadi is going through the museum, Yugi approaches him, says that it's his puzzle, and the man, Shadi, decides to test Yugi using the Millennium Key to enter Yugi's soul. Inside Yugi's soul, which is an MC Escher-ass looking ring of stairs and doors, Shadi meets Yami, and they decide to play a game where Shadi has to find where Yami is hiding inside all of these rooms. Going through all the rooms, he goes through a number of Home Alone-style classic Gothams where he opens a door and then, here's a spout of water, here's a falling weight, now you're on fire. And this goes on for a bit until Shadi enters the room where Yami is. He approaches Yami, and he has one last trick up his sleeve as the floor gives out. Yami then extends his hand and pulls Shadi out of the hole, saying there's no more tricks, but Shadi does lose this game. However, it wasn't a shadow game, so no one loses their soul.
Hooray!
Yeah.
A happy ending.
Yeah. At the end of it, Shadi returns the Millennium Puzzle to Yugi back in the real world, and says that he still has the desire to test the true Yugi inside of him, because he apparently is a sore loser, I guess.
I just don't think he believes that this boy could be the one who awakens this puzzle chose. You know, it is mentioned that like these Millennium items are like chosen, like they choose the bearer. So if you weren't chosen, or you weren't chosen, anyone who tried to wear that puzzle or that item would be engulfed by the shadows. I think that's like almost exactly what they do say happens. So I think it's just a little hard to believe someone like that has the pharaoh, the one, you would say.
Speaking of people with the Millennium items and having darkness within them, let's move on to Shadi being not so chill in the next episode. Shadi opens
a guy out a window.
He opens up the episode by just throwing a man out of a window. Not a shadow game, not the Weighing the Soul, just some classic defenestration.
He just takes that one professor that's Solomon's friend and just says yoink. That doesn't happen in the manga. He actually has a way more dumber fate in the manga, but we'll get later to that.
All right, well, as it turns out, the professor did not die from being thrown out of a window, as he is rushed to the hospital, and Solomon is there helping observe him, notes that he survived but barely. After that, the friend squad, who I guess also cared about this professor they met once, are leaving the hospital, and Shadi's in the background watching them all, and he wants to find a way to get closer to Yugi, So, using the key, he decides to enter Teia's soul. He has a look around. It's much different than Yugi's soul. It appears as sort of a ballet studio, 4 walls, 1 floor room. There's some various things around. There's a tree. There's sort of an artistic sun. There's a picture of New York. There's a vague outline of someone who she would want to be her perfect man. And he does note that her soul has confidence to it, which I appreciate him appreciating Teiya. While possessing Teiya, though, at school the next day, Shai decides to hit Yugi with some classic Gotams, I assume as revenge, doing things such as dropping some pole vault poles on him in the gym shed, throwing a basketball at him from the top of the stairs, trying to strangle him in the nurse's office. Classic stuff like that.
None of this happens in the manga, by the way. Tristan and Miho aren't even in this part of the story. Like, just point that out.
And that's why I won't be mentioning them at all in my recap.
Except for the fact that you could just continue on. We'll talk about what Tristan does in the second.
Oh yes, now I remember the professor's actual role. That'd be a good callback. So, Shadi lures Yugi to the roof, and he challenges Yami to take over and have a shadow game to truly test him, where it is seen that he has put Teiya out on sort of a pirate-style walk-the-plank board hanging off of the school roof. There's a couple of...
This is how One Piece was... Sorry. I was going to say this is how One Piece was created.
Yep, this is where it came from. So there are a number of little reliquary antique things that are tied with rope to the Millennium Key and also tied to Teiya, and they're to challenge the conviction of Yami's heart. If his conviction wavers, they will break and Teiya will slip further, but if Shadi's breaks, and he only has one to break, the key will then slip down and make contact with her hand and release his control over her. The first game that he is challenging Yami to is sort of a fill-in-the-blanks panel flip, where there are 9 panels on the ground where he has to identify what the center panel is, and the only tip that he has, and all these panels are hidden by the way, is that he has to go by the beast Amit that is holding him. Yami deduces that the thing in the center would be the thing that Amit only has one of, which would be its mouth, as the only other things that it is shown as having were all duplicates with its eyes, ears, hands, and nostrils. Nostrils was a weird little thing in there. The next game that he is challenged to is challenging to the spirit of Joey, not actually Joey's spirit, just sort of a reflection conjured by Shadi.
Hey, Yug.
Where they have to... Hey, Yug. Where they have to spin the Millennium Puzzle and see what direction it lands pointing, all taking turns. Wherever it's pointing is where the other person has to walk, and they are walking towards the edge of a pit. And during this, Yami refuses to play against him because he acknowledges that he would not want to do this to Joey. And after a little bit of this back and forth, the spirit of Joey refuses to make the final spin and finish off Yami, because I think this might be something like the spirit of Joey was conjured from Yugi's memories or Yami's memories of Joey, because he says that my friend is not that person anymore who would do these cruel things, and the spirit of Joey refuses to play, which breaks Shadi's conviction. The Millennium Key slips. It goes down to Teia's hand. She is awoken. She is saved. Shadi leaves, saying that he has finished his test, and he believes that Yami is on the up and up, and he doesn't have to worry about it. He says some stuff about maybe potentially coming back, but that never got to air, so he doesn't.
He kind of, comes back, but not like, I don't think he ever really comes back and like shows his face to Yugi really ever again. But he does ultimately come back later on in the series. At least I don't know if in just flashbacks or what, but we'll kind of get there when we get there.
You want to tell the people what happened to the professor in the manga?
So in the anime, obviously Tristan and Mio have to come because they're characters that have to be there. In the anime, the professor gets thrown out the window, and it's just like within the first 5 minutes. It's very funny. Also not funny. To distract the supporting cast while Yami and Shadi have their rematch, Tristan becomes a zombie henchman thing where he just basically mindlessly attacks the other people. I think it's like Joey and Miho. I guess it would be maybe even Grandpa, but I can't necessarily remember that part of the episode.
He chases Joey and Miho around.
Okay, so yeah, no Grandpa, because Grandpa's with the yeah. So in the manga, Shoddy does not touch the professor. They actually go to I think they go to protect him, if I'm remembering correctly, and he ends up being the one who gets possessed. And there's a lot of beatdowns by Joey, like this dude like just keep kind of mindlessly going at them like a zombie. He definitely loses a few teeth, gets his face punched in quite a bit or like beat down quite a bit. Kind of played for that kind of visual horror gag. Ultimately very funny. Maybe not as funny as just him just randomly getting shot out a window though.
Always funny when someone goes out a window. Classic comedy.
And we never see them again.
Nope. But let's see someone new in this next chunk we're covering, which are the Bakura episodes.
Which is, I would like to point out of order in the anime, but there's a bigger thing we want to talk about afterwards. And Bakura kind of goes more within the like Millennium world than the Kaiba world. So we want to do this first. But if you're watching the season 0, it's Kaiba and his shit first, and then it's Bakura at the end. He's the last 2-3 episodes.
3 episodes. And very funny you would call it the Millennium World, thinking the stuff that would come later. But we'll get to that when we get to it.
That's a lot of what we'll say now.
Yeah, we'll get to it later. There's 5 seasons of this stuff. Calm down, we're getting there. But a little bit of intro to Bakura. He did show up earlier. As mentioned, he's in a little bit of the Kaiba stuff we'll cover after this. But he showed up in one of the episodes as just sort of a one-off introduction to him as a character with a unique design who will come back later, until he was eventually introduced to the school proper as a new student.
He's like, the parents like, don't get bored yet. This guy's coming finally. We've been hawking him in the opening this entire season.
Yeah. So this one opens up with all of the gang and Bakura showing up to the school. Bakura feels some heartburn and runs off, and he has a semi-conversation with the spirit of his Millennium item, the Millennium Ring. The Millennium Ring is, it's got a circle with the triangle and the Millennium Eye in the center of it and the 5 prongs sticking out of it. Those prongs are currently embedded in Bakura's chest, which looks pretty gross.
Ew.
And the ring is mentioning things about how it has its own designs and how things it wants Bakura to do. And the spirit of the ring mentions that it has been disappearing people in Bakura's life for years. And this has led to Bakura having to switch schools a number of times. And he would very much like it to end because he's just a good soft boy that wants to have some friends. And he's got this nice circle of friends here who look nice and vulnerable.
It's like a very good parallel with like Yugi and Yami. Like obviously that is the whole point of Bakura. Like he is the antithesis of Yugi, at least like spirit wise. But they are the same kind of frail, quiet, soft boys. Just with 2 vastly different powers behind them.
Speaking of them being the same and me saying he just wants friends, I don't think you said at the end of episode 1 what Yugi's wish with the puzzle was.
That was the friendship. That is. I mean, I guess that kind of made a sense when I said that's the main theme of the show, but that is his wish. It's just friendship. But you don't really. I don't think you really learn that. You might learn that at the end of whatever. But yeah, that's his wish, and obviously that's what Joey, kind of Tristan is, and actually kind of Bakura, later on. Yeah, the theme of every Yu-Gi-Oh show is friendship. What do the blue curtains mean? They mean friendship. It's just friendship and card games. That's all it is.
That's all you really need in life. But we don't have card games yet, because right now, all of the friendship squad have come over to Bakura's house to play a fun game. But when they get there, unbeknownst to them, the spirit of the Millennium Ring has taken over Bakura. And he invites them in to his gamer pad room, where he has an entire table set up for what looks like a sort of like a D&D board, when you're the sort of person who can afford to have, table space and all the pretty little minis out there and painted and stuff. And he invites the people there to play his favorite game, Monster World, which I don't...
Basically just D&D.
It's basically D&D with a little bit of Dragon Quest aesthetic.
It's gotta have its differentials so they don't get fucking sued.
Yeah, I don't think Dragon Quest was that big at the time. I think Dragon Quest 3 was out around then, but it was well on its way.
That's what the game that Akira Toriyama decides for, right?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's all connected. So, they play the game that uses a 2d10 rolling system / a d100 system. Not super important to this, but there are some plot points that come up. All of the cast picked their own characters to represent themselves. Yugi's playing a half-elf, half-human mage / summoner. Joey is playing a human fighter. Tristan is playing a human gunslinger. Taya is playing an elven sorcerer. And Miho is playing an elf merchant. And it is revealed to the audience by the spirit of the Millennium Ring to Bakura that all those people from his past who were disappeared, he put their souls into the little figures that he uses for this game, which makes me wonder how long he's been playing this game, because there's probably some young souls put in those figures.
There was a gym teacher who was harassing him earlier at one point, and he becomes one of the play pieces, actually. And they're like, hey, you, doesn't that guy look just like the gym teacher? And Yugi's like, yeah, he really does.
So, the objective of this game is to defeat the Dark Master Zork, a name that will become relevant later when we get there. Calm down.
Don't worry about it.
A lot of these 3 episodes are going to blend together because it is all one interconnected plot, so I'm just going to cover it as it happens. The squad rolls around the town. They go to the village. They find out the purpose of the game, where to find the Dark Master. They go out there and they fight some monsters. They fight Zork in disguise, who reveals himself, who summons more monsters. They see that the game is going to be a difficult one to win. And after Miho gets an especially terrible roll, she is defeated by Zork, and her soul is put into the piece that she chose to represent herself. Tristan, not going to take this lying down, decides that he is going to roll to fight back against Zork, and the Spirit of the Ring calls him out for bad game manners, and punishes him for acting out of turn by putting his soul into his figure. Joey, I believe, attempts to fight back and critical fails, and his soul is also put in. And at this point, Yugi and Taya, more so Yugi, volunteer to put their souls into their figures to try and help their friends in the actual game. And they do. Bakura accepts this deal because then it means he thinks there'll be no one to play against and he'll just win by default. But the spirit of the Millennium Puzzle takes over to act as the person controlling the pieces. There's a brief exchange with the players all sort of looking up at the sky and seeing the Yami and Spirit of the Ring above the table, which they mention is the first time that Yugi has seen the Spirit of the Ring, and I guess it's probably the first time anyone's seen it.
This is the first time that they are cognizant of the spirit of the puzzle. I just wanted to quickly point out, obviously that's different in the how it kind of happens in the anime and the manga are a little different of how this happens. In the manga, Zork super crits and kills Taya first, and Joey reacts and does the out of turn and fumbles anyway to lose his soul next, and then Tristan just gets fucking murked, and then Yugi then is the only one to do this. Then we kind of go back to where you are now.
What I'm hearing is there really was no need for Tristan and Miho.
I don't like Tristan. That's going to be a running theme in this show. I don't like Tristan, and I don't think he's very useful.
Yeah, I don't care for them either very much in Season 0, but maybe there's something useful they did that we missed in the later stuff, but we'll get to it later.
No. Spoilers, no.
Hard predictions. It's a hard and accurate prediction.
So, yeah, what's it called? So, yeah, now they are finally... Yugi is finally meeting Yami for the first time, and they're finally cognizant of each other.
Yeah, so with Yami taking control and playing against Bakura, they proceed to Zork's castle. There's a couple of little things here where it's revealed that there's a dice throwing trick that is being used by the Spirit of the Ring and Yami, wherein they throw the dice in a certain way that the numbers they want are on top, and then they bump the table to knock the dice around as they need. And they both agree to not use this technique against each other, because then it's just super critting against each other back and forth. So Spirit of the Ring says, hey, how about we both cut it out? And they do.
Kind of.
Spirit of the Ring has other cheating tricks that he brings up.
The little bastard man.
Yeah, he's got a couple of nasty things in there.
Little bitch boy.
Yeah.
Fuck him.
So they go to Zork's castle. They fight Zork almost immediately. They almost die to a spike fall trick, but they're able to use Miho's ability to manipulate numbers as her class to get out of it. Not super important.
Not in the manga. Well, the act is in the manga. Miho being useful is not in the manga.
Oof. They fight Zork some more. They're able to pull the good part of Bakura out of Zork, who I guess Zork is a manifestation of the spirit of the Millennium Ring soul. So they're able to pull the Bakura part out of that because they're merged in the actual world. Bakura joins the party and acts as a healer. I don't remember what his race and class were. I don't know if they mentioned it.
I think it's a wizard. He's like a level 13 wizard.
That sounds like right.
Like a white mage kind of thing.
Yeah, he plays the role of healer in this for the team. The team does more fighting with Zork. Zork takes on his true monster form, which for those of you who are familiar with stuff that comes later, it looks kind of like a little bit of a cross between Summoned Skull and Relinquished. It's got those purple fleshy bits with the bone overlap. It's got a relinquished eye in its chest with the same open hole thing that makes me uncomfortable when I look at Relinquished for too long.
So a little fun fact, I actually used to pick up the Shonen Jump magazines when they were in print when we were younger, and I would get some of these chapters, and I was so confused by them. I didn't know what the heck it was, so I had no interest in it at the time. But I always thought Zork kind of looked like Obelisk the Tormentor a little bit. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that, and they're sort of like the big, broad-shouldered Takahashi design he uses for his big monsters. Some more shenanigans occur. Well, this occurred before with cheating, where the good part of Bakura was manipulating the dice throws by taking over Bakura's left hand and throwing them. But after he is pulled out of Zork, he is no longer able to do that. And so it all comes down to one final roll where the party is laying into Zork. Zork's gonna blow up everyone, including himself, and if the players lose, they're gone forever. And so the Spirit of the Ring attempts to use one final trick, using a power of the Millennium Ring to force the die roll to be whatever he wants it to be. He attempts to do this, but the Spirit of Bakura is also connected to the ring, and he shatters the dice he threw, making his roll a nothing. The Spirit of the Ring is defeated.
Yeah, it makes the final attack.
Yeah. All in all, I'd say this is a pretty fun arc. I liked it a lot. I like seeing all the little figures they had for Monster World. I like getting Bakura in there and seeing what he would be like, and I think it's fun.
I think this is, like I said, it is one of my favorite arcs that they have in Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is especially probably my favorite arc in this section of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Story before they go full on Duel Monsters. It's, Kaiba's cool, and I like Kaiba, but I like him more as a rival. I think Bakura, and as we he is like Yugi's Joker, or he is the arch nemesis of the story, and he's much more in the background for a majority of the series. But his role becomes more and more clear as it goes on, and this is a very good introduction to him. It's done in a way that is different from the Duel Monsters, and I think it's done pretty well for being a D&D ripoff. This could have been really corny, could have been kind of like one note like a lot of the games that happen, but this was a good kind of send off to this does feel like kind of a send off to, okay, after this it's card games kind of thing.
Yeah, and as a send-off, they included all the friend squad that we've seen and had experience, enjoyed or otherwise, with throughout the show.
Exactly, and it's, I don't know, all in all, I think it's a great way to end this part of the section of the series. But, unfortunately, for all of you, we have to rewind to fast forward in a weird way. Because now we gotta talk about the main rival, and probably some of your favorite one of your favorite characters in the series, if you've already watched this. Do you think Kaiba is anyone's favorite character? Sorry.
Oh, I definitely think Kaiba's people's favorite character.
Okay, good, because I didn't want to be presumptuous.
Yeah, Kaiba set the archetype going forward for all the other series for what the rival character would be. If they got a big coat on, you can kind of guess they're the rival.
He's a very iconic anime rival in a lot of the early 90s, and probably still to this day that Yugi Kaiba rivalry is one that I think a lot of people can go back to and say like speak fondly of.
Just the other day, in fact, I was talking with someone that asked me who I thought was a better rival character between Vegeta to Goku or Kaiba to Yugi. So he's still relevant.
I think so too. I think with that, I think Vegeta and Goku's become more of like not necessarily a rivalry and more of a equal partnership or like an equal. I don't know. Doesn't seem very rivalry anymore. But
Yeah,
that's
and
just
the way
me.
the roles have changed, I would say Kaiba's a better rival character, whereas Vegeta becomes another member of the supporting cast of Z Fighters and has a little bit of animosity towards Goku, but not in the same way Kaiba needs to defeat Yugi.
Yeah, especially how he does post story with the last movie.
We'll get to it.
We'll get there. So to cap off season 0, we will talk about who the main villain throughout the story is, or who they make him out to be, which is Kaiba. Kaiba is a very wealthy classmate of Yugi's, who runs his own game company and is the arch rival of Yugi. He is also the kind of the antagonist to introduces Duel Monsters. That actually comes as early as Chapter 9 and 10 and Episode 3 in the anime. Fun fact, Duel Monsters was called Magic and Wizards before it was called Duel Monsters. Very glad they changed that name.
I think the name Magic and Wizards was sort of trying to evoke the Dungeons and Dragons with the X and Y naming scheme.
That's what I'm thinking, but I like Duel Monsters a little better.
Yeah. And we'll always say we're playing Yu-Gi-Oh!
This is where you get the introduction to like Blue Eyes White Dragon and a lot of the earlier cards you might be familiar with.
Yeah. The big hits like Summon Skull shows up, Dark Magician appears as a card, but I don't think it's played in this.
No, actually that's a fun fact of the season is Dark Magician is like Yugi's main card and is played in one duel in the manga, but in the manga before the Duel Monsters, but he's not played at all, even though he is featured in the opening. Kaiba's introduced coming into Yugi's game shop. I think he's more introduced in the anime as a like kinder person, but who has ulterior motives and is actually a terrible person. That's kind of how they play him.
Actually, the first appearance of Kaiba is when he has his goons mugging a kid on a roof for the Dark Magician card, so I don't think he's introduced as that kind.
I mean, to our gang. I'm sorry, not to the audience. The audience, we know he's a bad guy right away.
Oh yeah, to the gang, he absolutely is he's like the Bakura, nice new friend boy for us all to have.
Exactly. They don't do that in the manga. They just kind of show him as like kind of a sleazy guy. Like you can visually see sleazy, but he kind of comes off as trying to be nice. In both events, Kaiba does see Grandpa's blue eyes. He does want the blue eyes. He's got to have the blue eyes White Dragon card. Yugi brings the card to the school and is like showing it off or whatever, which is very stupid. We've all had that issue probably in our growing up life where we brought a card we really thought was special and some kid tricked us into taking it home, and for them to take it home and they just stole it. That may or may not have happened to one or two of you in the world. Kaiba exactly goes, let me kind of look at the card. I just want to see it. Switches it with a fake. In the anime, Joey and Tristan are the ones who like are wise to the act. In the manga, Yugi is actually the one who's wise to the act. They confront Kaiba. Kaiba and Yugi do a Duel Monsters game. Kaiba tries to play the blue eyes. Heart of the cards, kind of pseudo introduced where Blue Eyes White Dragon is Grandpa's card. Won't play on Kaiba's field. Bullshit. And Kaiba loses in the manga, but Kaiba disappears in the anime, so he doesn't, he never truly loses, so he can have this big rematch later. Throughout the season 0, the anime adds what are called game masters throughout the series, I guess just so you don't forget who Kaiba is, even though you could just kind of like do the classic, oh, he's plotting something in the background. So they have these game masters who Yugi has to face in various games, and none of which are really important. It's just they're the henchmen of the week who you have to remember who's a part of the big bad guy. The one of real interest, even though he's kind of anime only, is Kaiba's old butler, who Yugi, I think they duel. I think they duel, and Yugi beats him, and
Yep.
he's like, no, there's good in Kaiba. I've been raising him from when he was young, and everything. So while the game masters are all doing their thing, Kaiba is in the background plotting the next evil master plan to beat Yugi, which is what we call Project Death T. It's a very, I think they put more creative thoughts in the puzzles. Not they didn't, than they did the actual names of the project. Kaiba lures Yugi's grandpa and wagers the Blue Eyes White Dragon in a card game. We finally see the first time Duel Monsters are played through VR, like they are famously done in the show. Yugi's grandpa is taken aback by it, I think is kind of caught off guard. Kaiba then beats Yugi's grandpa. Yugi sees it in this anime, and Kaiba then kind of, in the anime, it's, I think grandpa just goes into shock from just the fact that the VR monsters are happening. But in the manga, Kaiba does like kind of like a virtual shadow like penalty, like a penalty game, which is like the punishment Yugi goes through, like does throughout the series. Like how like Ushio gets like engulfed by those illusions in episode 1. He like gets a like fake attack by all these VR monsters, and he goes into shock that way.
Like Marty McFly with that shark in Back to the Future 2.
Kind of, actually. That's a very good comparison, but a very silly comparison. Yugi gets Grandpa's deck. He's like, I'll beat him with your deck kind of thing. I'll beat him with your dick.
Steve Harvey. Kaiba you gonna cut this out?
Nope.
All right. It's a winner.
Kaiba then takes Yugi's grandpa's blue eyes that he won and rips it. He's like, I'm the only one who could have blue eyes. Fuck you. And then is like, you want to get to me, you got to go through my Project Death T. And Yugi's like, all right, I'm going to do it. And eventually, like, in the anime, all the gang is there. But eventually in the manga, they all kind of like meet up in it. Like, I think Tristan and Taya both like have jobs there or something. I can't remember. And they kind of all run into each other. No, Tristan's out with an annoying nephew who was omitted from the anime, thank God. One of the better decisions of the anime. And Taya does have a job there because she has to have a job because money. Remember, we talked about this. And so they decide to go through the levels. There's 5 levels. The first level is laser tag with mercenaries. This is kind of done a little differently in the manga and the anime. Joey and Tristan have these really cool moments in the manga where like Joey does this guerrilla warfare and kind of takes out a few of the mercenaries. And then Tristan actually realizes the cheat behind the game where they had like shock, you know, like when you have laser tag, you have those like chest like sensors that if they shoot them, that means, you know, you got hit. If they got hit with them, they would have gotten shocked. And it was like something to do with the guns and how the guns would react to the chest things, like the laser. So they were able to kind of switch out the guns, and Tristan was able to like shoot the remaining people to kind of like knock them out. That's all taken out in the anime, and whenever Joey does that guerrilla warfare technique that he did in the manga, he gets shot at, and Miho does some sort of like, you know, kind of like comedic, shoots at everything and gets them all by accident. LOL, funny.
Also, these are actual lasers in this.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's like
like they're blowing up like the chest plate. Like they're gonna die.
Miho just committed murder. Funny. Very funny. So moving on from that, the Death T level 2, a lot is changed from the anime to the manga. There is an electric chair bit where if they like are faced with all these like horrific images, and if they scream, they get shocked by an electric chair. And this is like the like, you know how like in the early Willy Wonka, like the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie, where they're like going through that tunnel and like that whole like Gene Wilder is like being creepy and like, I don't know where we're going, and like there's all these horrific images and they're like all scared and shit.
Yeah, and there's that giant spider that Mike TV shoots.
Just think about that, But that's what they were going through with like in an electric chair, all of them in an electric chair. So that's what that was. But they omit that from the anime for either timing's sake or, humanity's sake.
Seems like a de-escalation between actual mercenaries with actual laser guns to Don't Scream. Granted, it's an electric chair, but like, I feel like Don't Scream is a lot easier than Don't Get Shot.
They were also like tickling Joey and things like that. Joey fainted in the manga because that's
Oh.
how he made it through, because they were gonna fucking lose it.
Very, very different.
Then they do this thing called the blood puzzle where they have to, like, I think it's like a riddle and they have to get the right number right and they're not sure. In this, if they got in the manga, if they got it wrong, they would have gotten their hand chopped off by a hand guillotine. If they got it right, they would have moved on. But in this, there's like a giant robot called Blood with 2 L's, and that's the number.
This is my giant metal son, Blood, who craves death.
It's like it's pretty much that. It's so stupid. And basically they kind of shut that off and like go through. In the manga, after they go through the blood puzzle, they fight Joey fights a serial killer. just fist fights a serial killer and wins. And
Man, the things the rich get away with doing.
I know, dude, it's ridiculous. I can't.
I don't. It's a little topical, but I think we'd call it too on the nose if we learned some billionaire made a murder bot and wrote blood on it.
They're not very creative. Listen to the project title, Death T. And so after that, then is level 3, whereas they actually do the iconic friendship speech where they all put their hands together and Taya draws the smiley face, and like as long as we have this, like, we know we're all friends together, things like that, we all keep each other stronger. That's completely omitted from the anime, but it is in the beginning of Duel Monsters and a very important part, and I want to talk about it because I think it's a very important part of the entire show. But then it's Human Tetris time, where blocks are falling on our gang and they have to dodge them and they have to get to a certain hole. Tristan gets his shirt caught on one of the falling cubes and is trapped, and he kind of sacrifices himself so everyone leaves, and you think Tristan dies, but spoiler alerts, he doesn't die. This is one of the only things anime fix that the manga didn't, because in the manga he gets his like school jacket caught but not his shirt, but in anime he gets his shirt caught, so I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. Like, he can't just get out of that like he can a jacket. Regardless, I'm like, all right, bye Tristan, you could have been gone and I would have been fine with it.
Rest in piss.
Honestly, I wonder if that was like Takahashi's way of going, like, maybe I should just kill him, and I wish he followed through.
I think he was a little crowded on characters at this point.
That's what I'm saying. So following that is level 4 with Kaiba's little brother, Mokuba, who we will come to know more and more later. But he's introduced as, the little brother who is also good at games. Yugi and Mokuba play a game of Capsule Monster Chess. It's kind of like a prototype Dungeons and Dice Monster. Was it Dungeon and Dice Monsters kind of thing? Just like capsule, like it's like little eggs with capsules in them, and you summon monsters. And then you move spaces and things like that. Mokuba stacks his side with a lot of powerful monsters, like right off the bat, and gives Yugi only very weak monsters. Yugi figures out how to use those weak monsters to his advantage, makes them stronger, beats Mokuba, goes like, you don't cheat to win games. Mokuba almost gets the grandpa shadow game treatment, but Yugi saves him. And Mokuba kind of like realizes the error of his ways because he's seeing a more positive influence than his, at the moment, piece of shit brother who likes to cheat to win games, and who's like that, like vicious, like, oh, like, you're not the it's like what's that Ricky Bobby quote? If you ain't number one, if you ain't first, you're last.
Yep.
And actually is the one who saves Tristan at the end. But finally, after that, you kind of go to the main event, which is Kaiba and Yugi, who have their famous rematch duel. We'll kind of go more into things like about it next. I'll just kind of say it's very back and forth duel. Kaiba seems like he has the upper hand throughout, and then at the end, Yugi summons Exodia, the famous Exodia, and wins the game. Mind crushes Kaiba, but gives him the opportunity to kind of piece back his mind to become good again. And that's kind of where we leave off with Death Thief. Grandpa's okay, everything's fine, we all live happily ever after, and Kaiba is in the manga in a coma. In the anime, probably dead.
It seems weird that he went more lenient on Kaiba when there were randos throughout Season 0 who he straight up killed.
Well, I mean, at the time he was talking like they were talking like he was good again. I did forget to mention that Mokuba did kind of also reinforce that like he was a good guy until he met like their shitty shitty foster dad.
Yeah, there's a brief, like literally like one scene, 3 lines of dialogue maybe of Gozaburo.
Gozaburo, the shitty foster dad who Kaiba kills. Or no, he jumps out a window, I think, actually.
Man, can you imagine the better world we would have if all the children of these weapons contractors bought out the companies and converted them into game companies?
I mean, I'd rather that be the case than war.
A world where the military spending budget went to gamers.
Maybe we'd finally have that actual dual disc.
Maybe we'd finally have affordable PS5s.
Ugh. But at this point, this is kind of the end of Season 0, and I mean, Bakura is the end of Season 0, but this is kind of encapsulates everything we kind of wanted to discuss with Season 0. It's it's an interesting tidbit of Yu-Gi-Oh history. It does kind of go through a good chunk of the first part of Yu-Gi-Oh, and you get a good amount of backstory with the characters and what the Millennium Puzzle is, and a little bit more of their motives that you may not really understand, or it's not translated very well in Duel Monsters itself. So we thought it was kind of interesting to talk about. And it also is like the first part of Takahashi's original vision for the show. So I personally think it's a little more important to at least like start off with. But now we can kind of actually just cap off the episode and move on to the pilot episode of the Duel Monsters. That's animated by Studio Gallop as opposed to Toei Animation animated Season 0. And we kind of go back into what is kind of a mixture of everything I just talked about, but condensed in a half-hour episode that Phoenix will kind of lead off and talk about.
Yep, here's the thing that you've all been waiting for. Talking about Season 1, Episode 1, The Fearsome Blue Eyes White Dragon. This episode is iconic, opens up with Yugi and Joey playing Duel Monsters in their school, bunch of students crowding around to watch, talking about how Joey is learning the game from Yugi, and Kaiba is on the other side of the classroom and overhears them talking about Yugi's grandpa having a super rare card. The Friendship Squad, which now is just Yugi, Joey, Taya, and Tristan, goes to the card shop later to see the super rare card. Grandpa shows them the blue eyes. Kaiba comes in, says, "Hey, old man, I'll buy that card from you for all of these cards." It opens up a briefcase full of just absolute garbage cards. And Grandpa, of course, says, "No, this is a first edition Blue Eyes White Dragon. It goes for way more than this trash pile." And
He's like, "I'm onto your games, Kaiba."
"I've checked TCG Player every day." This card's gonna sell for my retirement plan.
You're gonna give me a Mushroom Man too?
Launcher Spider? That's weak shit.
You want me to give you the rarest card in the game for Kuribo? Deal.
I gave Korea to my grandson as a joke. So, Grandpa mentions that Kaiba doesn't understand the heart of the cards. This will come up later. Kaiba takes offense to this, but does leave, only to shortly thereafter send his goon squad to kidnap Grandpa and force him to a duel. Off-screen, Grandpa loses this duel. The Friendship Squad shows up after receiving a threatening phone call from Kaiba saying, "Hey, I completely destroyed your grandpa. Come collect his corpse." And in front of their eyes, Kaiba tears the Blue Eyes White Dragon. It's iconic.
You notice this is where like his like demeanor kind of really changes. Like you see in his face, like even like at the earliest the phone call, he's like a different being, or like he's being possessed by some sort of dark game spirit or something. That's what their excuse is for it. But you can kind of see that change.
Is that what people say now when they say a slur on Call of Duty? I was possessed by the dark gamer spirit. Is that going to be the excuse now?
Sorry, I called you the wrong word on Fortnite. I was possessed by a dark game spirit like Kaiba and Yu-Gi-Oh.
And then they're going to say, "What's Yu-Gi-Oh?"
And
then you explode because you're our age playing Fortnite.
I've never played Fortnite.
Me neither. Anyway,
Good.
When they do a Yu-Gi-Oh crossover, maybe I'll play it. They got Naruto. They might get Yu-Gi-Oh.
They have Dragon Ball.
They've got everything. But what they don't have is us. So we're going to go back to us. So, after tearing Grandpa's card, the Friendship Squad, which actually it's just Tristan and Taya, say they'll take Grandpa to the hospital so that Yugi can get revenge and challenge Kaiba to a duel. They put their hands together and make a circle of friendship, which it took me years to realize they drew a smiley face.
It is kind of weird at first. You have to really kind of look at it when you're, 6. You're like, what is that? I think the first few times I thought it was like kanji or some sort of like writing for friendship.
Yeah, because like the gaps in like their hands for like the outer circle of the smiley face missing really like distracts you.
It was lost on me, but I was also not a bright child.
I just missed it. I'm great. I was a smart John, the smart adult. Everyone praise me.
All hail Phoenix.
Indeed. So, Yugi is dueling Kaiba in his state-of-the-art duel arena. Joey's there in the stands watching, and they see these holographic projections of the monsters are put up in real time. Such great hits are put up, such as Soggy the Dark Clown, Winged Dragon Guardian of the Fortress, Battle Ox, Judge Man, Hitatsumi Giant, and we have a back and forth between them. So the rules of Duel Monsters for this are a little weird, but I'm pretty sure this is how I've got it down. Players have 2,000 life points. Damage can only be done through battle, or I don't think effect damage even comes up in Season 1, so we're not going to mention it. So only through battle damage. And if a player is unable to summon a monster, I think they just lose, because I don't think it ever happens, but there's no direct attacking.
No, there isn't a direct attacking. I think that he has to play a monster every turn, so that's why you just constantly see him playing in defense mode.
These game rules will come up later when I talk about a point in the next episode, most likely. But things go back and forth. Kaiba summons the Blue Eyes White Dragon and puts Yugi on the back foot. Yugi summons out the Dark Magician, uses Swords of Revealing Light to stall out for a bit. And Kaiba eventually summons all 3 Blue Eyes, a thing no one's ever been able to do before. But then something else no one's ever been able to do before happens, where Yugi slowly draws Exodia 1 piece at a time, gets all 5 in his hand, and wins, summoning Exodia the Forbidden One. In the sub, he says Exodo Flame, which is not the same as Exodia Obliterate, but that's what happens. Kaiba is defeated. Yugi uses his magic powers to, give Kaiba a condition, and quote-unquote destroys the evil in Kaiba's heart. After this duel, it is somehow brought to the attention of one Pegasus that Kaiba has been defeated, thus getting the attention of this mysterious character, but they did name him, so I can say Pegasus. And that's pretty much where it ends. Mokuba shows up for one panel to scream out Kaiba's name after watching his brother just completely get aneurysmed.
This is what I was referring to, the Mind Crush. So this is something they do a little differently, but also the same in the anime and the manga, where Yugi mind crushes him. The motives are for Kaiba to be good again, but in the pilot, they do say like, "Oh, I'm destroying the evil in your heart." In this, it's Kaiba is a game master. He's a game guy. He needs to put the puzzle himself and put the work in, which will come up later. We'll get to it.
We'll get there.
I'm trying to think. There's something else I wanted to say.
A thing I'd like to note is there is an entirely new voice cast between Season 0 and Season 1. Yugi is the most noticeably different one, with his voice being much deeper and him sounding a lot bolder than he did in Season 0.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah, we did talk about this. Everyone, it's a different. I guess because it's a different studio, so they wanted to be differentiated from the previous anime. But yeah, that's actually it. That is the pilot. I think it does a better job than the Season 0 anime of telling everything I just talked about in the last section and condensing it in a 30-minute time frame where you actually get the idea of what the show is. You get the friendships, you get the card games, you get the giant duel arena, which is not in the manga. The manga is just a literal VR cube set, and that's what they use into Duel Monsters up until the battle disc or the duel disc. Sorry, we'll get there, and I think it's kind of one of those things that enhances it, makes it look more visually cool. There's giant monsters, there's cool designs. Very good introduction to this card game series and to this anime. I think it's a very good start and a very good intro. Doesn't go through a lot of everything else and who you dive into who Yugi is and who his friends are and who Kaiba is really and any of that stuff, but you at least get what the whole show's about, and you will learn those things as the show goes on.
Having gone through season 0 and having known what happens later, what was anything that stood out to you or that you particularly enjoyed from season 0?
A lot of when we first talked about like doing this show and me proposing to do season 0, I personally wanted, this was going to be the first time I ever watched season 0 personally and like actually getting through it. I've read the Yu-Gi-Oh manga before and I've read through the entirety of it before, and I was eager to kind of go back to it again, so this was a very good excuse to. And I thought it would be important to bring up this kind of stuff, the stuff with Shadi, the stuff with Death T, the stuff with Bakura, the intro and Yugi, and seeing him where he was when he started, because when you see him in the pilot, he's a little bit more, he's kind of like, you see him kind of in the middle of, he has the friends, he has everything he wanted to start out with, so you kind of don't get that side of Yugi. Honestly, I think one of my critiques with the beginning of Duel Monsters is Yugi's not necessarily that same weak boy. He's weaker compared to Yami, but he doesn't like, I kind of liked seeing that journey of that kind of shy, meek boy kind of grow more confident and grow more like into his own with his friends. I did like changing the games a little bit. I liked some games more than others. Some games worked more than others. Obviously, a big fan of the Monster World. Obviously, a fan of the Duel Monsters. There was like this Tamagotchi one where it was a good spotlight for Yugi, like actual Yugi, and they completely took that out of the anime. They put the game in there, but not the Yugi moment, which I think is bullshit. But it kind of was a slog. I'll be honest with you, the season 0. Personally, after kind of having a little bit higher expectations than I probably should have. I just didn't like Miho. I didn't like Tristan. I still don't like Tristan. I think they were kind of really forced in there, and it was apparent. A lot of the like game masters were kind of forced in there, and I think could have been omitted. And I don't really think did too much, even though they had roles in the whole Death T anime. But I didn't even touch on it because I didn't even think they were necessarily that important. But overall, I think it's a fun watch, especially if you just kind of want to watch Yu-Gi-Oh content, and you can probably check it out anywhere. I think we watched it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. There's a couple of different channels that have it. It's got subtitles.
It's cool to see that part of Yu-Gi-Oh, but I think the main series, the series that got everything going, is the better series as a whole, and kind of more interested to see the differences between Takahashi's vision and how that translates into an animated form, which we will get into as the show goes on.
Yeah.
Well, I think this caps off everything we need to go on to. Now we are going to go into, for the next episode, we are going into Pegasus, and I think we're doing, how far are we going into?
Next episode, I think we're going to cover Pegasus and Intro to Duelist Kingdom.
Okay, so right before Weevil, so that'll be cool. So yeah, this was the first episode. I know it's a little bit longer. We're gonna kind of do shorter episodes for this, but we felt it could be a good bit longer for the introduction episode. You know.
Yeah, we're summarizing 27 episodes, so cut us some slack.
I know we actually tried to do this once before, where we actually tried to go through the 27 episodes, and we were like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that was too much. That was hubris on our part.
But we're excited to get this rolling. I'm excited to kind of divulge into more of the manga tidbits and little story changes that I like, or the story changes that I think should have stayed or kind of might have been translated a little better. And I'm excited to just kind of analyze the series with my buddy old pal who I've watched Yu-Gi-Oh with for the last 20 years.
I'm psyched. I'm pumped. I'm stoked. I'm gonna go to Egypt. I'm gonna plunder tombs. I'm gonna fill myself with curses. It'll be great.
Don't do that. Let's not do that last part.
You're not my dad.
Let's just talk about Yu-Gi-Oh.
Fine. Stay home.
Do you have any socials you want to plug?
You can find me on twitch.tv/PhoenixFarce or youtube.com/PhoenixFarce. Twitch, I stream gameplay of various games that I like to play to have fun, mostly focusing on card games, play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, started picking up MTG Arena, Marvel Snap, Legend of Runeterra, stuff like that. And if you don't want to catch me live, you can go to the YouTube where I upload stuff same day I streamed it. And that's where you can find me. What about you? You got anything, Andy?
I don't know if I have anything yet for myself, but I will say any and all links will be posted for Kuribros, Phoenix, and myself in the descriptions of wherever you're watching this. And yeah, so if we do, I might add them in later. We'll kind of go from there. But for episode 1, I don't have anything right now.
All right, then I think we're at the part of the show where we're supposed to run an outro. I prepped the intro, but I didn't have one, but I think I got a solid one we can use going forward. Thanks for watching the Kuribros. I've been Phoenix.
And I'm Andy.
And we'll get to the next episode when we get there.
Bye.
Get out!